Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it is both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaway. All that way, your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, this past week, a lot of effort went into preparation for Comic-Con LA. A group of filmmakers and I, Jeffrey Crane Graham, Morgan Lester, Danielle Argyros Lefevre, Courtney Stewart, and Khalil Abderrahim, we were all on a panel together to talk about how to make a low-budget indie film without sacrificing ambition and scope, right? And that was the title. That was basically what we were trying to achieve. And so, there was planning that went into that because we wanted to make sure that we gave really good value to people. And by the way, it has since happened. And even if you couldn't attend, that's fine because it is available on replay, as they say, so you can check that out. I've linked to it down below, so you can go watch it and learn. And sort of midway through the week, I kind of noticed an inherent issue in terms of what we were planning. And the inherent issue was it didn't fit with what the title was. It felt very safe and very like by the book, here's how film school teaches it, and that ends up being costly and very routine and so forth. And, I'm someone that loves mavericks. I try to be a maverick in the sense that just break the rules, right? My overarching philosophy is whatever gets the project done is the correct way. Obviously, without hurting people, being a heinous person and all those different things. And by the way, it's all possible and it's all doable. You don't have to be an asshole in order to do things differently. But anyway, that was my approach to it all. And, I also value having differing thoughts. I always wanted to sort of bring that to the table. And, these are people that I collaborate with. And the reason I collaborate with them is because there's an aspect of, I have my drive and they need that, but they also have practicalities that I need, or sometimes the butting of heads can come to a third unseen solution that actually works best of all. So, none of these sort of guiding philosophies, if you will, are better or worse. But it just felt like we were leaning too safe and not enough of like the aspirational and so forth. And so, we talked about that. And also it felt very clinical, as if like we were just going to lecture people. We wanted to make it engaging, and Courtney was the one that really pointed that out. And so that made me reshuffle the rundown of how we were going to approach this. And more so, it was like, okay, we know where our biggest issue will be. 50 minutes is just going to go by like that, right? It's going to be so quick. We're going to barely scratch the surface. And, in hindsight, of course, like it went great. But yeah, I mean, the next day you're thinking, like, I wish we could have included this. I really wanted them to know this. But I did make the effort along with the rest of the team to make sure that we could supplement what we had on stage. So we had a list of resources for people to be able to utilize. And then, all the tips that we had come up with, we put in there as well. So that way people could benefit from that. And so, there was, of course, the lecture, if you will, but then just the written material that people could take home. So they didn't have to like vigorously take notes, and they worked in tandem. So I think that really was quite useful. And for me, one of the big things that if I look back on it, I wish I could have gotten across more is the idea of limiting beliefs, anytime you're fearful of something, it's because it's a limiting belief. And certainly therapy has been, tremendous for my art as well as life, right? Like if you can get past limiting beliefs in life, then it only elevates what you do. And so, that was kind of a big component that I wish I mentioned. And a more practical way of saying that is the tactics to make a movie on a low budget are out there. Question why aren't you stepping up? What is so fearful to you about the process? And, sometimes people like hide behind the idea of making it perfect, right? Which is an arbitrary thing, of course, or that they need to know more. And there's a lesson that I taught, if you look it up, just in case knowledge versus just in time knowledge. And many people in the world are trying to pick up just in case knowledge, like anything I need to know, blah, 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 so I'm well prepared, versus just in time knowledge is, knowledge, like when you need something, you can go out and get that information to be able to do what you need to do, right? So, yeah, while it would be great to know so many different things, there's a better use of your time to be able to actually move forward. And when you need that stuff, you learn it, right? It's one of the very first lessons that I ever did is about it's not what you know, it's what you do when you don't know. And I think that's the key difference with people in general is, how will you step up to be able to, whether it be a film project, whether it be writing a book, writing a song, whatever it may be, whatever creative endeavor that you're seeking, if you don't know something, that's okay. But what are the steps that you're going to take to gain that, right? And just in time knowledge falls into that category, right? So yeah, there's that big aspect. And I also, we didn't get enough chances to talk about the distribution side of things. There was so much to kind of go over just in terms of the starting position of everything. But, the truth of the matter is, when it comes to any sort of project, you will have to market it, right? It's hard enough, yes, to make the piece of art, to grind that out. But in order to find success, you, especially on the indie level, will need to market your own stuff and account for that and be ready mentally to be able to do that. So it's all a part of it. But overall, I really loved, people were very much engaged. The room had about 100 seating capacity and it was 3/4 full. As I said, we wanted it to be a back and forth dialogue, not just a lecture. And, people were raising their hands, asking questions. So they seemed very much into it. And afterwards, we had a chance to talk with a few people, and so forth. I think what makes it tough is I'm sure a lot more people would wanted to connect, but, it's Comic-Con, right? So you have like 20 different panels probably going on at the same time, plus everything else. So, you're always trying to, catch as much as you can in the moment, and it becomes, difficult with your time, right? But that's also what makes it so exciting. And regardless, the people that, had to like rush off to the next thing, you could just see they were very much inspired, and I think we'll do something with this information. I mean, if nothing else, they enjoyed what we had to show, and it was worth their time. And I'm very grateful for that, because that was the goal, right? One quick other thing that came to mind also that I wish we had time to share is this idea that even if you get rejected, be thankful for those opportunities. Plenty of times film festivals have rejected my films, and I say to them, hey, thank you for watching the movie and giving me a shot. And oftentimes they'll offer me tickets to the festival, or, like, hey, keep submitting, stuff like that. And, I think, whether it works out or not in that regard, if nothing else, just is good, right? It's just rejection is hard at times, and when people are honest with you, I think that deserves recognition in and of itself. Because people did take the time to watch the movie and consider it, and so that in and of itself is a major accomplishment and deserves to be acknowledged, right? So, I think that's a big component. That again, just time-wise, I wish we had the ability to share and stuff like that. But, it is what it is. As I said, our full panel discussion is available. I've linked to it down below, so go rewatch it if you were there. Watch it for the first time if you haven't. And yeah, comment with anything that comes to mind that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to explore, and I can maybe just respond with a quick answer or just do a video for future, right? That's the awesome part about all of this. So yeah, that was an exciting thing. One sort of aspect of it too, heading into it, I was feeling a little bit under the weather, and given kind of circumstances of everything, I very much wanted to make sure that everyone was comfortable, and so I had notified the team and I said, hey, like, if you guys decide that, you guys don't feel comfortable with me on the panel, totally up to you. If one person is not up for it, then I'll bow out. And it's kind of funny to me, maybe not the right word, but regardless, where a couple of weeks ago in therapy, we tackled the idea of preferences. And, how you can like something, like if you go to an ice cream shop, let's say, and you like chocolate ice cream, but if they don't have it, then vanilla or something else will be fine with you, right? That you're not going to essentially throw a hissy fit based on, something not going a certain way. And, it really was like that for me, where for so long, like in many ways, I'd kind of like built to this, and, it was a culmination of everything that I'd worked towards. Like it was it's an honorable thing to be able to speak at a Comic-Con, right? And to deliver a message. And, I wanted to, of course, from a selfish perspective, it's amazing to be up on stage and have people listen to you. But, I hope, at this point you recognize that, like, I truly did want to bring as much value to the stage as possible. But I also knew that if I wasn't there, that I could trust them to do a great job regardless without me. And so it really was, I didn't have a preference. Like if they said that, they didn't feel comfortable with me being there because of sickness, it wasn't, it's not COVID or anything, just the common cold, but, still I wanted to be mindful. And everyone said quite emphatically that they wanted me to be a part of it and they wanted me to lead this. And it was just funny, like, oh, they seem to have a very strong preference for me being there. So, okay, cool, I guess I'll go. But yeah, it's just quite the thing to not have an actual preference and to be okay with that. And I think, again, when I talk about mental fortitude, resilience, and how therapy has helped me both in life and certainly art, this is an aspect that certainly is just going to yield dividends, because it's not going to make me, I think, yes, you need passion and you want to be passionate. I think when people think about, let's say, like stoicism, they think it's unemotional. And it's not about not having emotions. It's about not letting emotions, dictate you towards the negative, let's say, right? Excuse me. So I think that's a major component of it, right? That idea that, you are able to respond with a clear head no matter what. And that if things don't go a certain way, that's okay, because you recognize that that it's okay. There's other opportunity. And in fact, something that I was also thinking about in general is this idea that, excuse me, I apologize, I truly do, that there's some people who, when we talk about not taking chances, and you could call it not living life, people get fearful. So, for example, I know many hosts that, because they're hosts, they, let's say, won't go horseback riding or won't play a sport or anything because, they're so fearful that if they get hurt, that their career is over. And certainly people have tried to impart this on me, when, just because, like, I'm oftentimes in a manager position, things like that, and so forth. And so, at the time when I was playing soccer, people were like, what if you get hurt and this and that? And yes, all that stuff is true. But, the difference is, for me, regardless of what happens, whether I get injured or not, like, I always know I can create new opportunities for myself. I really believe in that, right? And, that's why in a more kind of succinct and specific way, there's people in this world that have ideas and they hold on to them for dear life, not sharing them with anybody, and they never really get made because of that reason, because they're so fearful that the world's going to steal that idea that, God forbid, they let it out, right? Whereas, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm very open with ideas and things that I'm doing. Why? Because, if someone decides that they want to steal an idea of mine, first off, execution is the real thing, right? Ideas are a dime a dozen, and most people will never execute on an idea to begin with. But even if they do, that's okay, because they're going to execute it way differently than I ever will. And, regardless, I also know I have 500 ideas that I can execute on at any moment. Like, I have that faith and evidence of myself that I can just output more and more. Regardless, I can pivot. It's all good, I'm not threatened by someone just taking one singular idea. And, that's how I approach life in that same way. So, going back to the example of a host being too scared to, let's say, ride a horse because they might suffer an injury. And it's like they're pinning their entire existence, their career, on this idea that they're just a host. And it's like, okay, well, if it was me, I can think of 800 other things that, if it came down to it, that I could do. Right? It's that part, you can call it confidence, but I don't really call it confidence. It's more evidence. You want evidence of yourself that you're capable of so much more than you imagine, right? So, yeah, that's kind of, major thing for me. And that certainly goes into another big aspect of last week was creating this pitch deck and presentation for my upcoming project, my new film called The Arbiters. By the way, you can sort of track that journey on my Patreon page. I share various outlines and write-ups and character sketches, because it's an animated movie, so you can kind of get more of the behind the scenes there. So that's patreon.com/Svitek. There's only one tier. It's $10 a month. And beyond just like seeing behind the scenes stuff, one of the benefits is, excuse me, the aim is really to create a community, and we can have more direct interaction, right? So I do monthly Q&As and things of that nature there. So if that's of interest to you, check it out. Patreon.com/PhilSvitek. $10 a month, only one tier. Everyone gets everything for that price amount. But anyway, yeah, so I was working on this pitch deck, and, we're now finally at the visual phase where things are being put into place, whereas before I was focusing on the text, or as in advertising, they say copy. And it's been really great to see this come together. I shared it with a few of my collaborators, and they're like, no, visually, it's a really, really good start, and they like the layout. And I say start because some of the pages are, template only and need to be filled in with the right graphics and so forth. But a great jumping off point. And also, as far as all of it got me thinking, just story ideas in general, and getting a hook right off the bat. This is an animated movie, and so anything's possible. And I'm really inspired by that and thinking about, okay, how do I open this movie that really engages people? Because I had like an action set piece to open the movie up. I always knew I wanted that. And then in hindsight, I was like, wait, this could be an exciting set piece, sure, but it's an animated movie. Anything's possible. So, what would like a Chris Nolan action set piece be? I thought about Clive Cussler, who has his Dirk Pitt novels. Dirk Pitt is like the James Bond form, right? It's this action adventure type of dude. And those books always open up with something like grand happening. So I was like, okay, I really got to thinking, like, what would be my big action set piece? And I think I've finally thought of one that really works. But it's been fun to really employ that creativity to try to think of, what could I go with? And quite serendipitous in all of this, one of my friends is someone who wants to write, and they texted me because, they know that I write, and they were like, hey, what are some books that I can read on writing or story? And I said, well, ironically, there's one called On Writing by Stephen King, and there's one called Story by Robert McKee. But I said, really, you don't need books on writing. What you need to do is read at least an hour a day of fiction, right? Because that stimulates you. As Stephen King says, those who don't read can't write. So read an hour a day consistently. Then write consistently. I would say twice a week for at least an hour, right? That's not that much time. That's 2 hours a week, but it will yield good results. And then edit. I've talked a lot about this. People think that they need inspiration in order to write. And they don't. The quality of your writing neither decreases nor increases based on your level of inspiration. The inspiration comes from that consistency, and your mind will start to be like, oh, okay, cool, we're doing this, and boom, that's how you break through. That's the difference between an amateur writer and a professional writer. And I don't mean in terms of getting paid, I just mean in terms of output, right? Professional writers have a consistent schedule and work on their craft. So, that's a big component, and, part of what allows these ideas to flow through me is because I have that consistency to me, and my mind knows to like, hey, you know what? Let's generate some ideas. I know this is like a big thing. Here was the initial idea that my mind came up with, but let's explore some different possibilities. And so I kind of feel like I came up with a pretty cool one. So that's been fun. And yeah, it kind of taking a quick step back. The reason I'm even doing this pitch deck and so forth is originally, I wanted to have a full script and things of that nature kind of laid out before I started pitching this project. However, an opportunity came up because of my latest movie, a Bogota trip. There's an opportunity because people saw that, they liked it, and they're like kind of like, hey, what's next for you, right? Type of deal. And so there's this opportunity to present, and so there's now a time, a date locked in for this pitch. So all steam ahead to make this happen, right? And I'm very excited for that. That happens this week. And again, just kind of goes to show this core idea that in order for people to take notice, you have to be making stuff, right? People aren't just going to give you an opportunity if you're just asking for it. No, you need to be putting out work in whatever way that you can. And, for me, I've been fortunate to be able to make the movies that I've made, but I've also pivoted. Like, my first novel was intended to be a movie, and it's one that I knew I wouldn't be able to make. So I was like, let me turn it into a novel, right? And so, you find a way to get things done creatively if it's an idea that you truly want to express. And that can take on different mediums, At least it does for me. Maybe not for you, that's okay. But you find a way. And I remember I was talking with somebody, a friend of mine, I won't say who, but they were saying, oh, you're so lucky, you're getting to pitch and, people are interested in this next idea of yours. And I said, listen, I'm not lucky. No. Let me correct you. I'm not lucky. I might be fortunate, but I stepped up, right? This is someone who criticized me for a Bogota trip. They didn't like certain choices and so forth, and that's okay. The one thing I will always say at this point is that you might not like my movies, but guess what? You can't tell me that they're shit movies. They're not shit movies, right? And because of that, now it's leading into this next opportunity. Whereas, again, just so many people that I see that are aspiring, they just wait and don't take any sort of risk. And it doesn't mean be careless and so forth. One of the things that we talked about at Comic-Con was this idea that, like, for me, it took me, I was 30 when I made my first film, which doesn't sound like a lot necessarily, but I'd been doing film stuff for 15 years, whether it be documentary work, feature films, sizzle reels, TV shows, and digital stuff, and yada, 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 right? Like, I've been doing it, and short films. And so I'd learned, and I felt confident enough that I could make a feature film finally on my own, right? And I did. And that led me to be able to step up then with my second movie, right? So that's the exciting part, I didn't just foolishly dive in head first. Like, there was evidence of myself to be able to go after this. So, yeah, I think that's the big thing. And, the World Cup has also been happening, and I've been very fortunate to be able to watch a lot of the games. And one quote that really resonated with me is this idea that you play the game, not the occasion. And what this means is, during a World Cup, there's big matchups and players have to step up, right? So, for example, the USA versus Iran, USA had to win in order to advance to the knockout round. So that was the occasion. Can they get through to the knockout round? Well, if you play the occasion, you get in your head, and you play fearful, and you're apt to make mistakes, right? Whereas if you just play the game, knowing how you play it, then the occasion takes care of itself. And this is a good metaphor for life in general. Certainly the creative endeavors that we all take, making a feature film, whether it's your first time or so forth, is a big endeavor. We'll call it that the occasion. But if you just take it bit by bit, using what learning along the way, and so forth, then you can succeed, just like the U.S. men's team did to get out of the knockout round, right? That's a big component of it. And what's been wonderful to also just witness in this World Cup is people's mentalities, right? Again, sport is a great metaphor for life. That's why I love it. And I love soccer in particular. And, there's a player named Modric who plays for Croatia. He is 37 years old. But man, oh man, he's playing like a 29-year-old in his prime still, right? Like, usually when players get that old, they they start to wane and so forth, and not have the mobility and the impact they used to, right? Not him. And part of it is he has such a mental fortitude. He's like, no, we as Croatia, we are here, and our goal is to get as far as we can into the tournament. In fact, to win the World Cup, right? Like, that's his mindset. Whereas you had this golden generation of Belgian players, and in theory, one of the best players in the world, Kevin De Bruyne, who after their first game, he said, he was asked essentially, can Belgium win the World Cup? And he said, no chance, we're too old. And he's 31 years old, okay? And I take it in a way very personally because, I love Modric. Modric plays for Real Madrid. So we have this 37-year-old who just still lights out, will, burst through a wall, anything for his team, and will carry his team as much as he can, versus, someone who people say is one of the best players in the world. And this is his mentality. If I was the coach, if I was the Belgian coach, I honestly would have thrown him out. I'm like, hey, if you don't think we can win, get the hell out. What are you doing here? Right? And, not for nothing, people will disagree heavily on this because there are so many people who love Kevin De Bruyne, but he is not a big-time game player. Even with Man City, he never steps up. And this is exactly the reason why. Because he has a limiting mindset. He has limiting beliefs. He really believed that the Belgian team were too old. And guess what? They crashed out. And I don't think that's a coincidence. When your best player, this is the mindset that he has, that we're too old, we don't have a chance. What do you expect? Whereas Modric is like, hell no, we're going all the way. We don't care. We don't care what other people think. We know who we are, and we're going to do what the hell we can to advance. And so far, they're still in the tournament. They're in the quarterfinals, and Belgium crashed out in the group play. This is the importance of mindset. In everything. This is why talent and skill is not enough. You need to master mental fortitude. That is what this World Cup has certainly taught me. Also, just in general, speaking of soccer, I love how soccer brings people together. And, I was kind of reflecting back on during the pandemic, it was playing soccer, very much like old school, just kind of wherever we could, sort of in secret. That kept my sanity, right? I don't go to the gym, I play soccer. And so, yeah, it was great. And then just recently, there's been so much soccer happening in LA that, people are playing on before, in a pickup game, and then there's a league game and so forth. And so, I don't know, I got to see so many of my friends, all at once. And it's just been a nice reunion to be able to witness that, right? And see people that I haven't seen in a bit and say hi to them. Very grateful for that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with things. One final thing I wanted to share, and this is completely out of left field, but something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't know if I'm able to express it in a perfect way, but when I look at the tensions in the U.S. And the polarization, I'd be very curious to see if everybody serving in the military, as 18 years old, would help diffuse some of that. Military is not, is not mandated here in the U.S. And not that I'm a pro-war or anything like that, or militarization necessarily, but I think certainly there's a sense of camaraderie that happens when people serving come together in that way. So I don't know. It's just something that I've been kind of thinking about, debating about in my own mind. And yeah, I know it's out of left field, has nothing to do with really what I've been talking about here, but just wanted to share it nonetheless and kind of get your opinion on something like that, just to gauge the idea, and be able to bounce it off of someone else besides my own internal dialogue. Anyway, that's kind of what's been happening. As I said, please enjoy the Comic-Con LA panel. It is there for you to watch, link to down below. And as always, whatever questions you have, please comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Would truly love to engage with you and hear you out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time.